Hi, welcome to our Sustainable and Ethical Fashion Day. I'm Matty and I'm the event lead for Louder Than the Storm. Here we've got a collaborative video with stylists, artists, sustainable designers and activists, and they're going to be talking to you about the sustainable fashion industry and how we can make a difference. I hope you enjoy, and also if you want to get involved, there's also articles on the website up today, and later we'll be having an Instagram live.
Hi, my name is Rosette and I am the founder and fashion redesigner behind Revival London, which is a fashion reconstruction brand centered around textile waste and specializing in the reconstruction of denim. We launched in 2016 and officially started selling pieces last October, and we're all about redesigning old garments and creating them into beautiful wearable pieces. The main inspiration behind Revival stems from my love of customizing clothing as a style blogger and always looking in my wardrobe to see how I could reinvent and redesign a piece that I already have. And Revival is essentially an extension of that. We completely deconstruct old garments and try to reinvent them into bold and wearable pieces. As a brand, we are heavily inspired by 90s culture, especially the 90s R&B music scene, in terms of girl groups such as Destiny's Child, TLC, and what we want to give out in our clothing is a sense of female empowerment, a sense of sisterhood, and making women feel great in what they wear. There are also elements of my personal heritage infused through our capsule collections, as I was born in London and I'm of Ghanaian and Nigerian heritage, so I infuse parts of my culture within our collections. So every Revival piece is made from a reclaimed garment, and we do not buy rolls of fabric. We make every single thing that we have from an old garment. And this is important because our main aim is to tackle textile waste in the fashion industry. And with 350,000 tons of clothing being sent to landfill every single year in the UK, we really want to help that and bring that number down by reclaiming those garments, reclaiming offcuts from factories and putting them to use. I think it's really important for other brands to think in this way as well, in order to help reduce that number and save our planet essentially, because the more that gets sent to landfill, there is going to be an overflow of waste, of pollution and damage done to our earth. Revival certainly champions diversity, and this is so important in the fashion industry because for so long there have been, this image of a white, very slim, blonde model on the catwalk for many years, and it's important that we are representative of the population. We are representative of the people that are buying these garments, and we show different sizes, we show different shapes, we show different ethnicities. That is so important, because otherwise if you push a particular image, people don't feel welcome. People don't feel like that brand resonates with them. And I think that's why we push for diversity so much. We work with models from all types of ethnicities and shapes and sizes. We do not discriminate at all. And I think that's what's helped us to stand out as well. We are not just going for the slim, blonde looking model. We want every single person, every single type of person, every single style, every single quirk to be represented through our brand. I think ways in which the fashion industry can be anti-racist and make space for diverse voices is, firstly, stop stealing elements of Black culture and repackaging it as something else. That has been a major issue over the years. We've seen with cornrows and braids on the catwalks. We've seen this with black fishing. We've seen this with, the Ghana Must Go print bags being redesigned as, designer bags. It's insane how much of Black culture has been repackaged and redesigned as something that it's not. And I think that's something that needs to be stopped immediately. Pay heritage, pay homage to the cultures that you are inspired by. That is so important. I think something else that the industry can do is be proactive in hiring Black talent. Be proactive in seeking out a diverse workforce, because there's nothing worse than working with people with the same exact mindset, because there is no growth, there's no different perspectives, there's no discussion, because everyone just thinks the same, and that's not productive. That's not exciting. So I think it's important to have a diverse workforce, people from different backgrounds, different perspectives, all coming together to create amazing content, to create, to publish amazing pieces of work, and do that intentionally. I think it's also important for the pay and the treatment of garment workers to be heavily investigated. There's so much news out there about, the low wages that garment workers have to accept in order to maintain some level of, life. And a lot of these garment workers are based in places like India, and it's just insane how much they get paid and how badly they're treated. So that needs to be investigated. Fashion companies also just need to educate themselves. They need to read up about the history of slavery, the history of racism. They need to educate their staff and their workforce, open their eyes to the oppression that's been going on for over 400 years, and begin to understand. With that understanding, with that education, then they can speak up about racism. They can confront racism when they see it. They can object to someone being racist, and that's how we shape our community, we shape our society to be better, by standing up for something that is wrong and speaking out about these issues. I think consumers can take action by educating themselves. Education is so important. It's important to read up about the history of slavery and racism and oppression, and to understand the issue at hand first and foremost. I think it's also important for consumers to, people say that you vote with your money, with your pocket. So if there is a brand that is, mistreating their garment workers and not paying them fairly, you could boycott these brands and actually say, no, I'm not going to feed into, this horrible treatment, and how, this brand is profiting off of you, but not treating their garment workers fairly and not paying them decent wages. So that's another way in which consumers can, control or have some sort of impact in the industry. And I think it's also important for us to speak up about racism when we see it. Through the education and understanding, we can then, spot when something isn't right, spot when someone has said something that is not right, and address that situation. And of course, signing all the petitions, donating, and just raising awareness of racial injustice and, the unethical treatment of garment workers is important, to just keep that message out there, and don't be silent about this issue. Don't be silent about the issues in the industry. Speak up about these things, have discussions with friends, with family, and just continue to push the message for, justice.
My name is Tilly Robinson, and I am an environmental activist. I have a master's in global environmental change and policy, and I'm currently producing an audio documentary series about the climate crisis and system change, which is due to be out at the end of the year. So it's really important to understand just how damaging the fashion industry is to the environment and how much it contributes to climate change. So the IPCC, which is the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, it's the UN's panel on climate change, and they do all of the data crunching and numbers and projections. They've calculated that the fashion industry contributes 10% of our annual carbon dioxide emissions, which is a huge amount. And part of the reason that this is because it takes a lot more to make clothes than you might think. Just a simple cotton t-shirt, that uses 713 gallons of water, which is enough water for somebody to meet their drinking needs for 2.5 years. So as you can see, the clothes are a lot more energy and resource intensive than you might think. That's not the problem though. The problem is the scale and the rate at which we produce and consume them. So this is down to a modern business model that lots of fashion companies adopt, which encourages fast fashion. The fast fashion business model is basically where profit is primarily made by making lower quality garments and at a lower price, and then selling them very cheaply but in mammoth quantities and constantly. This is one of the reasons why we have so many seasons now. So we used to have 2 seasons, maybe 4, summer, winter fashion seasons. Now we have about 52 micro seasons. So they just bring out new lines every week. And part of the reason they do this is to make you feel out of trend, because fast fashion can only exist if companies artificially create consumer demand. So that's what they spend their mammoth budgets on. Instead of paying more for their garments, they pour resources into advertising, into getting us to buy as many garments as quickly as possible, just to keep that sheer scale of consumption going. Because as customers we can't have ever-growing wardrobes, we consume the clothes. We buy them, we wear them once or twice, and then we throw them away. And it's this model that's the problem. 3/4 of clothes end up in landfill. And because 60% of discarded clothes are made out of non-biodegradable fabrics, they can sit there for 200 years. Companies need to change their business models to a new one which prioritises sustainability and longevity, with the focus basically changing from quantity to quality. And there are several ways that you can encourage this from a policy point of view. One of the ideas is extended producer responsibility. So basically, instead of their responsibility for that garment disappearing as soon as somebody buys it, it's extended throughout the whole life cycle of the garment. So if it ends up rotting in a landfill causing environmental damage somewhere after 2 months, that cost, that environmental cost, is incurred into the price of the garment, and the producer has to bear that cost. So that idea, along with other things like incentives, such as tax breaks for companies that design products with a lower environmental impact, the idea is that these will kickstart circular thinking. The idea with circular thinking is that we move from this more linear system of produce, consume, dispose to a more circular system, where things hopefully kind of never reach the dispose, so they never really become waste. So they're made to a high quality to begin with, they're made less regularly, they're bought less regularly, and then when somebody's done with them, they're absorbed into the second-hand system, which keeps going round and round and round. And if you have this thriving second-hand market, rental market, reusing of valuable materials, people will be buying new less often. It's ambitious. It's probably like we're never going to get to the place where there's zero waste from the fashion industry, but even efforts to move in that direction would be huge from a sustainability point of view. So another solution would be to encourage the fashion industry to become a more localized industry. So at the moment it's incredibly global, which means by the time a piece of clothing gets to you, it's been flown around the world, probably with each process being done in a different country. And obviously this incurs a huge environmental cost. And if it could be changed so it's more local, things are often made in the country that they're bought and designed, then that would be a huge step towards making the fashion industry more sustainable. Another way that the fashion industry could approach this would be transparency clauses. So fashion companies would publish their supplier lists, how their clothes were made and the conditions in which the garment workers made them. This would make a really big difference because environmental issues and social issues are inextricably linked. You can't separate them. And in regards to the fashion industry, this is really obviously true. If you think about all the components that allow fast fashion to exist or flourish, that we consume more for less, you have to think, how is this possible? One of the reasons that fashion companies are able to sell clothes for such a small price and still turn a profit is that the price they pay for the clothes to be made is even smaller, meaning that they use unethical labour. They can do this by outsourcing their production to developing countries with poor labour laws and human rights protections. In fact, 97% of fast fashion is made in such countries. And in order to understand why this happens, it's actually really important to understand the West's colonial history. So colonialism started as far back as the 1500s, but only officially ended around 70 years ago. Colonialism is the practice of acquiring full political control over another country, occupying it, and then exploiting it in many ways, but primarily economically. Even though it's no longer happening today, the structures of economic exploitation still exist, and this is referred to as neo-colonialism. So Source Map have actually traced the supply chains of sort of large fashion manufacturers, and they found that the data showed that the trade routes are the same as they were 150 years ago at the height of European colonial exploitation. So in the same way that the colonised nations would provide cheap resources, mostly food like sugar and coffee, to the West, the developing nations now provide cheap semi-disposable clothes to the West and to global economic upper classes. This form of fashion can only exist because developing countries bear the brunt of the social cost and often environmental cost. Once this cheap and unethical labour is ended, companies won't be able to produce garments in the sheer quantities that they were, which will help transform the business model into a more environmentally sustainable one, as well as tackling the social justice issues. And one way of doing this, like I said, is increasing how transparent companies need to be, so consumers can trace whether their clothes have been made ethically or not. Although it's important to remember that transparency doesn't always equal accountability. A company could be very transparent about being unethical, and unless you know what you're looking for and you're looking, it won't make a difference. What do you do if you want to make a difference? Well, you've probably heard of the 3 R's, so reduce, reuse, recycle. There's been a huge emphasis put on recycle since the 80s, but it's time that we realise that buying cheap clothes and then giving them to charity shops is problematic, and it doesn't solve the problem. Only 10% of clothes that people donate to charity shops or thrift stores actually get resold. The rest end up in landfills or flooding markets in developing countries like Haiti or Ghana, and making it very difficult for local people to sell the clothes that they make. What we've got to get better at is the first R, reduce. We just need to buy less. It's a lot harder than it sounds though, because we're used to being encouraged to buy more, and it really means rethinking your own relationship with fashion and shopping. We shop for lots of reasons, whether it's just the buzz of making a purchase, whether it's to make ourselves feel happier when we're feeling down, whether it's to keep reinventing ourselves to make us feel enough. These are all things that economists call pseudo-satisfiers because they don't really make us happy. A tip that Arja Barber gave that I thought was really good was that if you go shopping, make sure you're wearing clothes that you love and you feel good in, so that the standard is high and you're not tempted to just buy something that's marginally better than something you hate just because you're wearing it at that time. Another good tip that she said was to unsubscribe from emails, so you don't constantly get these emails through telling you sale every week or new clothes every week that really pull you in. Instead of buying something new, try focusing on treasuring your old clothes. Pull something out of the wardrobe that you haven't worn in years and see whether you can freshen it up and make it feel you again. Repair your clothes, make them last as long as possible. And then if you want something new, then have a look at the second-hand market. Buy second-hand, go thrift store shopping, go to charity shops, swap with your friends. Try renting services if you want something, you know, for an event. And then if you want to buy new, shop from small brands that are sustainable and have transparent and ethical supply chains. Another tip would be to utilise the free information that's out there. The more you know, the more you'll be motivated to make the transition from fast fashion to slow fashion, and the more supported you'll be, so hopefully you'll find it easier. There are so many great Instagram accounts out there, podcasts, that just give away tons of information for free and guidance on sustainable fashion. And then if you want to do more than just change your own consumption habits and sort of vote with your wallet, so to speak, then a really powerful thing to do is to hold companies to account vocally. Reputation really matters to brands, and if you ask them publicly on their social media sites, who made my clothes, or bringing up reports that show that they don't pay their garment workers, then that will hurt them and they will start listening to their consumers. Other people will see it. As long as we start building awareness of these issues and speaking to the brands about them, telling them what we want, hopefully they'll start listening and changing. But the good thing is that people are starting to understand the extent of this, and they're starting to understand the extent of their own power, because it all starts with you and your closet.
Hi everyone, I'm Sian from Sian Textiles. I'm a sustainable artist and costume designer, and I graduated from the University of Arts studying textiles design in 2014, which is where my passion began for sustainability. My practice as a sustainable artist revolves around creating artwork that reduces waste in order to reduce the harm that it causes to the environment. I work with a variety of materials in a creatively aesthetic way. Nature has a humongous influence on my projects and my inspiration. Most of the clients I actually work with choose to work with me because we have a similar view. I love taking inspiration from nature because I find it so incredibly beautiful how free natural form can be, and yet so intricate. It's like looking through a kaleidoscope. My most recent set installation project, which is actually right behind me, is called Quarantine Jungle, which I started at the beginning of the lockdown in March. For me personally, I get a lot of release from nature, and so I found it quite triggering to be stuck inside for a long period of time and not being able to be surrounding myself with it. This project that I just completed is made out of various different types of plastic that I've just collected throughout the lockdown period. Most of it my own waste, some of it others have supported me in collecting. I find it really freeing to work with waste because I don't know, there's something so raw about it. It's quite challenging in a positive way that you can just come up with some crazy ideas from something that was nothing. I created this project to kind of encourage more people to like take a pause and, you know, be more present in their environment and nature, and especially as the lockdown's beginning to ease and everything's slowly going back to normality. I definitely think that as artists and designers right now in this current climate of eco-consciousness and sustainability, it's really important that we all play our own role no matter what discipline you are in. For the first time in our history, humans have had to pause and stay indoors, and I feel like I've noticed how this has actually disrupted our consumerist society in the West. I've noticed even some of my own friends that wouldn't call themselves creative have started doing more creative things to reduce the amount that they consume, such as like making their clothes or growing their own vegetables in their gardens, small things. And I just feel like the more people think about this sort of stuff, the better the world will become. I feel like this global pandemic has really changed the way people kind of are viewing themselves and their consumerist habits, and really thinking about what is important and how they can contribute.
Hi, I'm Valentina. I'm from Ecuador, but currently living in London. I study fashion design. I'm a visual creative director and a stylist. First, I want to say thank you, Louder Than the Storm team, for inviting me to collaborate in this video for the Sustainable and Ethical Fashion Day. Well, my passion for sustainable fashion, even that is an industry that harmed the environment and damaged the working class society, I think the right answer for this question is that I won't give up. I like fashion, but when I discovered the other side of the fashion industry, I was shocked, and I started doubting about myself and having thought of giving up in my career because I didn't want it to be part of that industry. But then I started reading and doing some research about people who work in sustainability, and I discovered a lot of creative people who still want to continue in their industry. They find a way to make it more responsible with the environment and with the people. And I said to myself, you cannot give up. As I said, I love fashion, I like fashion, and for me fashion is more than the word like to be trendy. It's more than that. So I will find a way to communicate about the problem and to create something that doesn't harm the environment. Another thing that I think is that it's really challenging for a lot of artists, designers, creative people, because you're not only focusing in the final product anymore, and you have to think about all the process and how you will do it less harmful with your fabrics, with your material, with your communication, with your people. How are you going to make these projects to make it less harmful? So that's what I think it's really challenging, and it's really great for people who's doing like upcoming projects. And how I started to get interested in sustainable fashion. It was when I finished uni. I have to create a collection of 12 pieces to get my fashion degree. I didn't want it to make something trendy. I wanted to make something like with a meaning, something that I was like really proud of myself to do it. So I started doing a lot of research about topics to have inspirations and to create something. And then I would start browsing in books, internet, magazines, and I found this book that I had. It was about design and creativity, and I found this article of this girl who dyed her clothes with natural dyes. And since that moment, I realized that that was the topic that I was gonna do for my final project. I did a lot of research about natural dyes and how the synthetic colors affects the sewage waters and the environment. So discovering that side of the fashion industry made me realize I want to focus more on sustainability and to give a message to society with my future projects as a creative person. Firstly, I want to talk a little bit about my recent project that is called Nothing to Wear. I did it with an Ecuadorian team. It's a short film that shows how girls have the entire wardrobe of clothes, and then it comes the classic quote that we said, "I have nothing to wear." So if you want to see more about the campaign, you can go to my Instagram account, Always Sermon, and you can watch all the campaign in there. It's gonna be all pink. And then you will see NTW, that it says nothing to wear. In my opinion, as a creative person, I express myself more in creativity and interpretation to show what words cannot communicate. And I think it's a really good opportunity that you combine creativity and film, because it's going to be something that people will remember. And if the film has an impact, a message, a good concept, people will remember it straight away. And I think it's more easier to educate people by giving them like something visual, because nowadays the people is constantly watching a lot of stuff in the internet, and they're browsing and browsing and browsing, and maybe, I don't know, those people don't have the time to do research or don't have time to read, but they want to still learning. They want to know what's going on. That's why like they're browsing constantly in the internet. So if we as creative like community show them a message to the society in a video that can have an impact, you can create a change. With one video, you can create not only the change of one person, you can create the change of various people, of changing their mindset on what's going on. And it's not only about like sustainability, it's you can create consciousness, and you can create and you can teach people how to be more conscious, and you can tell people what's going on in the world recently. So I think it's a good way to combine creativity work with film. I think they make a really good match. I would like to recommend 3 organizations that I've been reading a lot from them lately. They talk about sustainability, they talk about sustainable fashion, they talk about what's going on in the fashion industry nowadays, and they talk about like be more conscious and stuff like that. For example, Story Behind the Things, it's based in the UK. They don't talk only about sustainable fashion, they talk about sustainability, they talk about sustainable in general. They talk about design in general too. That's why I really like it. They not focus like fashion. They talk about sustainable in general and how to make this sustainable lifestyle bit by bit. And then you have Fashion Revolution. It's a platform that gives you a lot of information about what's going on in the fashion industry, how it affects the environment, the social impact, how it affects the water. All the research they have done, it's really good. So I really recommend to read the post at Fashion Revolution. Last year, I discovered this platform, Global Fashion Agenda. Every year they create a CEO agenda. So this year it's the CEO Agenda 2020. So it contains, like, it's a PDF that contains 30 pages, I think. And it gives you a lot of insights of what's going on in the fashion industry recently. And because of all this situation, they released a COVID-19 version fashion agenda. So because of the fashion industry has been affected tremendously, and not only like people who work in fashion, but people who made the clothes, factories, people who are like doing new business in fashion, it affects tremendously with this pandemic. So you can read the COVID-19 CEO Agenda 2020 so you can know what's going on in the fashion industry nowadays. Know that it takes time and to enjoy the process, because it's not a change that you will do it overnight, it's bit by bit. Don't pressure yourself, don't put so much pressure on yourself that you have to be 100% sustainable. No, it takes time. Second, read, educate yourself. If you don't have time, go and watch a lot of documentaries, videos. There's a lot of creative people showing their works in a visual way. Third, it's time to rethink when you're buying. Think about this question: is it going to last? I'm gonna use it again. So I'm not saying don't buy anything, because it's not like that, but just be conscious in your fashion consumptions. That's a really good way to starting a change. And the first step is that you want to change, and that's important, and it just takes time.
Hi, my name is Amelia. I have a Depop shop called Amelia Ginger. I've been selling on Depop for about 3 years now, but it's only really got a bit bigger in the past year or so. I don't really have a particular style that I sell. It's quite open, but it's like in summer it'll be dresses and long skirts and little vests, and then in the winter maybe flared jeans, trousers, shoes, Afghan coats, things like that. I source all my stock secondhand, mainly from charity shops, a lot of charity shops, from eBay, even friends sometimes give it to me. But I think it's so important to give people an alternative to buying fast fashion. Mainly because I'm always in charity shops. Everywhere I go, I have to go in all of them. I've never really been a fan of buying new from like high street shops like Topshop and Zara, because I just know the impact of buying new is awful to the environment and socially as well. So my collection of clothes did go a bit crazy, and I knew that I had to get rid of some. I didn't want to recycle them because of the energy that's gone into that, to then be made into something else. It's like, why not? Why can't someone have it as it is? So Depop's a great way of just getting rid of clothes that you no longer wear. The fast fashion industry is actually one of the worst industries to the environment. So to keep my shop sustainable, I try and do as much as I can. The postage bags that I use, they're normally reused because I buy a lot on eBay and it comes in its own bag. I just keep all of those. And also to encourage people to reuse the bag once they receive it, rather than just throwing it in the bin. I upcycle a few things, so if old stock isn't selling, I'll make it into something else. Like I've made these denim patchwork bags out of old jeans and just old fabric that's been lying around. And all my stock is secondhand, so it's not contributing to buying new. If you're thinking of making a Depop shop, I think absolutely go for it. It's so important to give people an alternative to buying into fast fashion. Your photography needs to be as good as you can, really. Like, you don't need a proper camera, your phone is fine. Just making sure that you've got good lighting and really clear pictures, like maybe some flat lays and also modelled shots. Your description, measurements you can add in, and a couple of hashtags, but not loads, you don't want to spam it. And yeah, make sure you source sustainably, like car boot sales maybe, charity shops, thrift shops, markets and places like that.
Hi, my name is Maribel. I'm an artist. My background is in performing arts, choreography, and I'm a painter and a jewelry maker. I'm the artistic director of the UCAN, United Collective Arts Inclusion, which is an arts collective dedicated to inclusion based in North Kensington. My inspiration is mainly connected to social justice issues that affect our life and society, and also beauty, philosophy, anything really. Really, sometimes I start from materials. I have a project called Goddesses, and for example, I made this necklace, which is mainly rough aquamarine and silver. I use a lot of different materials, upcycled, including pressed flowers and resin. My disability affects my practice in terms of having to be very humbled and accept that some days I don't function as well as other days, and so some days I'm unable to work, and some days I try to overcompensate. Yeah, let's do it. I think we need more funding, we need more opportunities to show and sell work, we need ways to have more visibility.
Hi, thanks so much for watching our collaborative video for our Sustainable and Ethical Fashion Day. We really hope you enjoyed. We'd love to thank all the participants and all the amazing work you've put into this, and just the constant inspiration you provide to ensuring we have a more environmentally sustainable fashion industry, and looking to issues around diversity, disability, representation, size inclusivity. These are really important things, and we really hope you've learnt a lot. If you want to get more involved, head to our Louder Than the Storm website, where we'll be hosting lots of other events, including a refugee panel and also a new exhibition on climate intersectionality. Hope to see you soon.